Alright, so let's get started. A few things you should do ahead of time. One is get yourself a 12 by 12 canvas that's pre-finished, or primed, I guess, for lack of a better word. It's already been primed with gesso, so this way it's one less step that you need to take on yourself. The first thing I did was misted the entire background, and there were 4 different mists that I used, and those are and you should generally always start with your light colors first, moving to your darker colors. This way you can create some really nice layers, and you don't have to worry about trying to overcompensate the lighter mist by spraying over the top of the darker mist so that you get the look. So the first thing I did was I lightly sprayed the entire canvas in spots. I didn't like paint it on, but I pretty much, kind of swished it over, and you can see by my shadow here. I swished and covered the entire canvas in Tattered Angels Glimmer Mist in the Yellow Daisy. And then I went and sprayed in spots, and I didn't entirely wait for the yellow to dry. All right, I had spots where it was still a little bit wet. Then I went over it with Tattered Angels Timeless Lilac. And what you'll find will happen is when you spray mist over mist and you haven't let the other one dry, especially on a primed surface, you'll find that your mist will bubble up and you'll have little tiny puddles. So I let that actually sit for a few minutes, and then I take a paper towel and I lightly blot. And what that really helps me to do is not only blend the colors a little bit better, but it gives me a softer edge to the mist. Once that dried, I then went back and I got some Lindy's Stamp Gang Starburst in Alpine Rose, Alpine Ice Rose actually. And you can see some of the darker spots where I kind of went a little bit heavier. My picture has pink in it, so I kind of wanted to pull the pink out of the picture. Then what I did was I took an 8x8 piece of corrugated cardboard, and this came out of our November Technique project kit that was full of gelatos and all sorts of fun stuff. And I cut out the center of the 12 by 12 piece of corrugated cardboard that we were given in the kit, so I have an 8x8 center, and all I did was kind of took the outer edge that had the 8x8 cut out, so I set it over, so all I was left with was with the center. And I took some Tattered Angels chalkboard mist in Peacock, and I lightly misted in spots, so I had little spots of blue just in the center here. Once that dried, and what you don't want is puddles, and it can be damp, which is perfectly fine when you go to your next step. I almost prefer it being somewhat damp, and here's why. My next step, I used the molding paste that came in our kit, our Technique kit, and I used a Crafter's Workshop stencil that we had gotten in a kit from Swirly Doos, it seems, over a year ago, maybe even longer. It's a really pretty stencil. Has some beautiful cherry blossoms and birds on it. And what I did was I positioned my stencil somewhat off my canvas here and off my canvas here. I didn't use the entire stencil, just parts of it. And I took my molding paste and I went through my stencil. You set it down and take a palette knife, which I have here, and I just went over lightly and easily, lifted it straight up, moved on my next spot. Now the molding paste, as it dries, will draw moisture from below it. So that's why it's kind of nice to have your mist slightly damp underneath. If it's dried, it's okay. It'll still manage to pull some of the color up. It just won't pull all of it up. So depending on the look that you're going for, you could either do it while it's still really damp or do it when it's dry. Either way, but you will get a slightly different look, and that's okay. Because what will end up happening is as this dries, it will pull up the color so that your stenciled area looks almost as though it's been chiseled into the background. So it's completely like a 3D image of your background. It's coming out with a little bit of the color, so it blends really nicely. And once this dries, we'll move on to our next step. Okay, I'm not sure if you can see this or not. I decided while I'm standing here looking at this to dry, and this happens to me a lot, you know, the best laid plans just go out the flipping window. I wanted to add some glass beads to this, and you can buy this at Michael's. This is by Liquitex, and it's just called Glass Beads. And here's what it looks like. Looks like a pile of glass beads inside some gesso-ish type of material. And this does take some time to dry. So I decided that while I'm waiting for my molding paste to dry, that I would just add some glass beads to the corners. And I hope you can see this. See, and then this bottom corner here. Can you see that? I hope so. So all I really did was using a palette knife, was I went ahead and just scooped some and kind of splotted it around. There's no rhyme or reason to it. And I'm going to let this dry, and then when that's done, we'll be able to add another layer of colors and paints and whatever else we want to add to this. And what will happen is it won't stick to the glass beads as much, so you'll end up with this really pretty shimmery look. Okay, while I'm waiting for my glass bead gel to dry, I'm going to begin working on a few of the embellishments that I'm going to add to my canvas. Chrissy offers up special order threads to our member subscribers, as well as our education and design team members. And one of these special order threads that she does actually pretty regularly is for Dusty Attic. And these two pieces are 2 pieces of Dusty Attic chipboard. So what I've gone ahead and done was prime them first using a paint dabber, just snow cap, just your regular kind of white. Once that dried, I ran them through my Cuttlebug and embossed them with a design. And hopefully you can see this just a little bit. Sorry about that. You really can't, can you? Oh, am I making you dizzy? Oh, you can kind of see it there. Anyways, I embossed the surface. And a word of warning, when you emboss more delicately cut chipboard pieces, you need to be careful, because depending upon how detailed your embossing folder is, you may find that these more delicate pieces end up getting pinched to the point where they're actually removed. They get pulled right off of your piece of chipboard. So just keep that in mind when you do emboss your chipboard, that your more delicate fine pieces can end up being smushed, or worse, taken right off of your piece. So after I went ahead and embossed these, the next thing I'm going to do is grab my gelatos. Came in our November Technique kit, and this is one of the purples that are in there. Now, one of the things that you should know about gelatos is they do react to water, which is kind of cool, because then you can use them as a paint. And I'm just going to lightly go ahead and actually paint these using this purple. I'm just going to show you how I do this. I'm just going to go ahead and my mat here, just do a pile and take my little mini mister, get some water on there. And in the gelato kit that we got, there's a paintbrush. I'm just going to go ahead, mix this together, and quite simply paint it on. Okay, the next step is I am going to grab some of my olive vine silk, silk acrylic glaze. Again, this was a special order that Chrissy offered for everybody. And I, of course, took advantage and got the entire line because, well, I'm that way. Most swirly doos savages are. We don't do anything halfway. We don't even do anything a little of the way. So I went ahead and ordered the entire line. Okay, so since this green is pretty potent, I have some on my my brush here, and I'm just going to splot it, if that's a word, on my mat. And then I'm going to use a tissue paper, paper towel, whatever, and I'm just going to gently blot this. And essentially what I'm going to do is try and dry brush this on. I don't want my paint really heavy and I don't want it really wet. That's essentially the definition of dry brushing, is your paint isn't entirely wet on your brush so that you're getting a very soft finish, and that's kind of what I'm going for. So hopefully I'm able to pull this off. Can you see that? Let's see if I can zoom out. Bear with me just a minute. Maybe you can see that a little bit. Anyways, the green is coming on really softly, and it's just hitting my higher embossed edges. That's the look I'm going for. Grab a little bit more. Okay, next up, again, I'm using my silk acrylic glaze, and this one is in nutmeg, and it gives me a really pretty kind of goldish coppery look, and that's what I'm going for here with my tarnished look. I may find that I've got to go back and add some more green. That's okay. If you start off light, build in layers, it's easier to achieve the look that you're going for rather than just trying to get it all done in one step. This is kind of really where patience pays off. I may find this isn't quite gold enough for me, but we'll see. Quite gold enough. That's alright. You never really can tell. You know, these silk acrylic glazes are somewhat opaque. So when you're layering them over colors, you need to keep that in mind. That's alright. I've got a quick fix. Okay, instead I'm going to use some Lumieres. One is in copper and the other is in bronze, and these are really nice to use together. So I'm going to go ahead and use some of my, is this bronze? Yep, I'm going to use some of the bronze first, and I'm actually going to apply this with my finger. And again, I'm dabbing. You'll be able to see it better in the photographs. But what I really have here is a lot of layering of colors, and it looks somewhat worn. It looks a little bit aged and somewhat tarnished.